so welcome to this panel about freelancing. So you want to be a Unity freelancer. This talk was organized by Kat, but it makes sense for me to kind of moderate, just so you can actually answer questions and not moderate. So yeah, just to kick things off, maybe we could have like a show of hands. Like, how many people are freelancers already? How many people are Unity freelancing? Oh, cool. Awesome. And how many people maybe want to be a Unity freelancer and are interested? Okay. Well done. You have effectively read the title of this talk. Good job. Cool. So it seems like we've got a nice mix of people. And how many people are kind of looking for freelancers to maybe potentially work on a project that you're working on as well? There we go. Well, it looks like there's plenty of opportunities in the room. So yeah, to just kick things off, I'd like maybe to go across the group and introduce yourself and what you do and who you are and all of that.
Hi, I'm Kat. Yeah, as Joe said, I sort of put this panel together. Reason being, I get asked a lot of questions by a lot of different people as to what it's like to be a freelancer and various advice. So I've been a freelancer for just over 2 years. I run my own company. Yeah, and I travel around the world as a digital nomad, so I work wherever my laptop is, wherever I can find power and internet. So if anybody is particularly interested in that, I've got plenty of advice on that.
Hi, my name is Emil, though I usually make the most noise under the name of AngryAnt. I've also been freelancing for 2 years, and I'm not doing the fancy travel thing, which is pretty cool, but now I have a family at home, so can't really get away with that. But so I usually do like on-site for a bit and then remote, a good mixture of that. Yeah.
Cool. I'm Iestyn Lloyd. I've been a freelancer for about 6 years now, doing Unity for most of it. I run my own company of just me, and I end up working at home almost all the time, so working remotely, and sometimes it can be 4 or 5 days between leaving the house. So I might have to get an office. Anyway, that's me.
Hi, I'm Kerry. I've been freelance on and off for the last couple of years, doing Unity stuff. I live and work in Brighton in the UK, and I tend to do on-site things, going into client offices rather than working remotely.
Okay, cool. So we've got a selection of about 13 or so pre-prepared questions that cover a lot of bases, but obviously there may be some questions that you guys have. So we'll have some time as well at the end for some audience questions. And yeah, so let's kick things off. The first question really is, why do you freelance? Anybody want to jump in on that? Why do you freelance?
I do it because I love the freedom. I can work wherever I want and for as often as I want. So I can work for a month, take 2 months off, depending how you budget it and how you plan it, you get a lot of flexibility and freedom, and I can pick and choose projects. That's the main thing. I can work on stuff that interests me. And yeah, I can switch between big studios or working on indie collaboration stuff, which is what I'm currently doing. So it's a good mix of things, and I love that.
Yeah, Kat and I both used to work at Unity. I was there for 4 years, and after that time, I kind of felt like I wanted something new. I wasn't quite sure what that was. So my freelancing is kind of like a search for a direction or something. So kind of researching different kinds of projects and trying cool tech, meeting teams, seeing how they choose to work. And yeah, maybe hopefully getting some direction at some point.
I was technical director for 11 years at a studio, and I just wanted to be my own boss and do something different, and yeah, also it's quite lucrative as well, so that's always good. That's why I'm a freelancer, yeah.
I kind of fell into it, really. The studio I'd worked for a few years closed down, and I started freelancing because I needed to find something in a hurry, and I didn't want to commit to another permanent job. I didn't really know what I fancied. And I found I enjoyed the variety of it. I think similar to Emil, though, it was more about just not knowing what I fancied doing next, and seeing where it led me. It's quite nice if you don't really know what your next big step is to just try out a bunch of different things.
So I guess the follow-on to that would be whether or not you see yourself continuing to freelance. It seems like, I guess, both Kerry and Emil, you both have a kind of an eye on maybe something in the future, maybe, but I guess you've not found it yet, so.
Yeah, I mean, it's a means to some end to be determined. So I've been doing it for 2 years. I'm not any wiser yet as with regards to a direction or a goal, but yeah, I mean, trying different things, the variety is great.
Yeah, I prefer stability to short-term contracts. I would prefer longer-term ones anyway. So for me, it's definitely a means to finding somewhere I'd like to settle a bit longer.
Yeah, I guess that I will be freelance for a bit longer, but there's so much work out there. I'm generally working far too much all the time, so I'm probably going to go the route of founding a studio, probably focusing on VR. But I don't know, that might happen in the next 6 months, maybe.
Oh, we are. Okay.
And yeah, I just want to keep freelancing because I love it, the freedom and the ability to travel. Like I can't imagine sitting in one office in a city doing the same thing all the time. I love just working wherever I can, be it a hotel or a beach or wherever.
You must have some kind of nomadic genes, yeah. I think, or something. Yeah. Cool. I guess one of the things with freelancing, obviously, is you need to be able to find work, which is perhaps one of the most daunting things if you're perhaps beginning as a freelancer. So how do you go about finding work? You know, what tips and techniques do you use to track down those clients and actually find the work to do?
I guess I'll go first. Networking. Networking it's all about who you know. What you know is important, but who you know will help you out a lot in freelancing. I worked at Unity before, so I had a lot of contacts and knew a lot of studios. I'm guessing the same similar for Emil, but mostly I work for friends or studios I've worked with previously or old colleagues who now work somewhere else. I've not had to actively look for work because I already had that network base. If you do need to look for work, I said I'd give a shout out to my friend Guy, who's a recruiter. I don't know if he's here, I can't see. There he is with his arm up. If you need a recruiter who specialises in Unity, Guy does that based out of Brighton. So there are recruiters as well who are good and will help you find work if you need it.
Yeah, going out freelancing was probably the most crazy thing I've done career-wise, because I had last month's paycheck and crossed fingers. No gigs lined up or anything. But I did have like a 3 months leave while, so finishing up at Unity. But it did allow me to, tweet and blog post that I was now freelancing and looking for stuff. And I was fully expecting like the first 3 months would be like crazy and I'd have to have an interesting talk with my bank about this new project. But I just started trickling in emails from like someone I'd met once at a conference or someone who knew someone, and I was completely taken by surprise by exactly how effective networking is. I'm just a social kind of person. I like to hang out with people, and certainly there's a business in that. That's interesting. But yeah, it's not to be undervalued.
I guess I get most of my work from Twitter, LinkedIn, and networking. Networking is such a hugely important thing to do. And I guess that does mean going out and getting drunk and just talking nonsense to people. But it does help if you're friendly and so on. But yeah, promoting yourself is really important on like Twitter and LinkedIn and so on. Like if you can show stuff you're working on or your own personal things, then that's really, really helpful as well. And also using hashtags as well, like game dev and so on, and made with Unity. It really helps. I've got lots of work through doing stuff like that.
Yeah, networking is important, I think. And again, I don't regard going out as like, right, I'm going to go and network this evening. I'm just a friendly, chatty sort of a person. But like you, I was very intimidated when I started doing it, and it was sort of out of necessity in my case because the studio was closing. And I found that some work has come in through word of mouth, but so much has come in just from having an easily searchable website, having an up-to-date LinkedIn profile. Networking is super important, but if you're not super well connected, I don't think it's the end of the world. And there are recruiters out there. I'm afraid I'm the person who replies to recruiters on LinkedIn, which makes it worse for everyone out there, and it encourages them. But there is work out there that you don't necessarily need to be best mates with somebody to get it. Just have an up-to-date portfolio, have an up-to-date LinkedIn, make sure people can find you when they're just randomly searching for, oh God, I need a Unity dev in London quickly, that sort of thing.
Also, a point I'd like to make, go out and volunteer for stuff. I'm pretty active in IGDA, both globally and also in Copenhagen. We're organizing the Nordic Game Jam, stuff like that. Also doing like blog posts, doing talks or panels. Stuff that actually provides value to people, so that helps the name stick a bit better. Because there's, branding to be done, basically. So yeah, logo up and all that.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. I've released a couple of indie games of my own, and done some speaking at conferences, and I've run the local indie dev meetup in Brighton. Not with a view to promoting myself, but on the other hand, it certainly helps if people go, oh, that's where I know that person from. They must know their stuff if they run an event, if they've spoken at things. So, yeah, putting yourself out there doesn't necessarily mean handing out business cards left, right, and centre.
That is a good point, actually. I used to run the Unity user group in London, and that really helped for getting to know people. But yeah, it wasn't networking, it wasn't schmoozing, it was more, let's talk about Unity for an hour and then get really drunk. And then the getting really drunk bit was where you made all your contacts and your friends, and a lot of work weirdly comes out of that.
On that note, I run VR Brighton, it's been a while since we had a meetup, but that has helped, it's a real passion of mine, VR, and I don't know, because I ran that, everybody seems to contact me about VR things. So if you kind of find a passion that you've got and you think other people are interested in, try setting up a meetup or user group. It's really, really helpful.
Awesome. So yeah, so assuming you've done the thing, you've made the leap, you're becoming a freelancer, you've got some clients, you've got some stuff coming in. How do you actually manage your work? Because obviously you're the person in charge. So if you wanted to, you could work all the way through the night, or you could, have a very structured plan. How do you go about planning your hours and your time? That must be tricky.
Yeah, it depends on the client for me. I've got some that are game studios in London, and I go to work in their office, and it's been, you work 10 till 6 with an hour off for lunch. I'm currently doing an indie collaboration game, which is completely different, and it's a lot less pay because it's an indie project. And I'm the only coder on this whole game. So I am full-time all the time. I rarely switch off from that one. So it gets difficult to manage your time, but you learn kind of where your breaking point is, and you do have to make sure you schedule in evenings out or weekends away or something where you are offline and can't work, because when you work for yourself, it's very, very, very hard to switch off.
Yeah, I work very structured, kind of a defensive thing. I've been dealing with stress at one point. So I basically have a separate office at home, and work stays in there, and play stays, in the couch or whatever. Working 9 to 5, I usually only sign contracts where I block out time, not specific deliverables. Who knows when they're finished? So I have actual guarantees for my calendar, and can make promises without killing myself. But yeah, and then on site, in order to, kind of prevent myself from getting too much into it and losing myself in it, I set myself a loose-ish limit of 25% on site, and the rest remote, so I still see my family. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, actually that's something I kind of struggle with. I work kind of constantly, all the time. You've got it much better. I spend most of my time working, and that's something I need to change because I haven't been on a proper holiday for the last 6 years. Because all my time is just projects, and then more work comes in, and then more and more and more. And yeah, so I probably need an actual office, I think. It's a tricky one.
I kind of, like Emil, I'm only interested in contracts where people are booking my time rather than me to deliver a specific thing. So again, that tends to avoid the crazy late nights. I prefer working on site. I don't enjoy working from home at all. I find I go completely nuts within about 2 hours. So I tend to work 9 to 5 at somebody else's office. That's fine by me. That's how I prefer it.
I guess it kind of keeps that feel of like a regular job in a way.
Very much so, yeah. I don't think I have that problem of work-life separation.
Yeah. Cool. I mean, one of the things I guess with the freelancing as well is the fact that effectively you're running a business, which means much more than actually just doing the work. So things like accounting and legal and all of that stuff that you normally don't have to take care of if you were just focusing on, say, purely the programming or whatever aspect of work you were doing. So what do you do with that? Do you have someone that takes care of that, or is it something that you do yourself, or how does that work?
I think everybody's different in how they run their business, and a lot of people don't do business. A lot of people are self-employed. I actually run my own limited company, and it's just me. And I have accountants, but I do a lot of the actual accounting admin myself because I want to know what my cash flow is. I want to know, I always run with a buffer. That's something I always do. I make sure I've got enough in the bank to pay 6 months' salary so that if a contract goes wrong or if someone doesn't pay me, I am not going to get kicked out of the hotel or wherever. It's always a buffer. So I choose to do a lot of that myself, but you can just hand it off and get an accountant to do it. Lawyers as well, there's plenty of them who you can just email and ping for questions, but mostly I do that all myself, but it is a lot of work. If I could delegate it off to somebody without it costing too much money, I probably would.
Yeah, I do, again, the same kind of defensive structure of getting an accountant. I mean, I looked at all the tax rules and such, and I get the feeling that it's somewhat simpler, the Danish rule set for taxes, than some of the horror stories I'm hearing. But still, I looked at it and figured, okay, I could maybe make this work and not get sued or anything, but I would probably not be able to sleep at night. So basically, I'm paying an accountant for being able to sleep. But I mean, I also do a bit of accounting just to get some rough idea. I've got this massive Excel sheet that in the end spits out a month name. That's basically the last month I can pay myself a salary. So it's just the effort of pulling in numbers, just pushing that month.
My tip is get a great accountant, and not just any accountant, but one that understands the industry that you work in for lots of different reasons. But yeah, getting a great accountant to take care of the stuff that they're good at, you can do the stuff that you're good at, like programming or art or project management or whatever you do. I highly recommend doing that. Just don't bother learning all the stuff you don't need to learn. Pass it on to somebody that specializes in it. It's much more efficient.
Yeah, completely agree. I wouldn't recommend DIYing that stuff. I keep an eye on my expenses, but again, I've got an accountant, same one as you actually, and it's an accountant that specialises in the industry, so he's aware of, say, the games industry tax breaks in the UK and things like that. A good accountant will basically pay for themselves, and yeah, you can sleep at night. And in my case, my dad's married to a solicitor, so if I need anybody to read my contracts, I can just do that. But maybe get an actual solicitor as well.
And so I think that's actually the important thing with the accountants. Whoever, do ask around and find someone who's good. I've got a really good small company accountants that have been very, very good for the last 2 years. But I want to branch out my company and take on different things, and it's starting to get more complicated, and I've found out they can't quite deal with that, so I'm actually switching to Iestyn and Kerry's accountant on their recommendation. But I mean, I've had a few calls with him, and he's already given me so much advice and stuff that I didn't know, so make sure you call around and find the people who are really good.
I probably went a bit overboard in the defensive setup. I didn't focus as much on special knowledge, but just figured out who had the biggest army of lawyers. And if I could afford it, okay, fine, now I can sleep.
Awesome. So yeah, you've got a bit of a team behind you, various different structures. But when it comes to the kind of divide between, the direct client work, like the actual programming, the actual artwork, the actual project management, whatever, what's the rest of your work day made up of? Is it a lot of email work, or is it a lot of admin work? Like, what kind of other things are you doing and taking up your time during your working day?
There's constant emails and admin for me personally. It's not just like accounting follow-ups or contracts and chasing payments, which does happen and will happen. Make sure on your contract or your invoices you've got a pay within 28 days or whatever, so you've got a valid reason to go and chase it when because they do forget or can't pay for some reason. So I have little bits of admin, but mostly it's I wake up, I make coffee, I sit at my desk and I code, and then get more coffee, and then at some point I'll sleep. For me at the moment, because I'm doing indie, it doesn't switch off. But when I worked in studios, then my evenings were just more for fun and networking and hanging out with friends, which is what they should be.
So programming, and then your ancillary tasks are primarily making coffee then?
Making coffee, yeah. I should outsource that.
Yeah, you should.
That'd be good.
How about you, Emil?
Yeah, I mean, a bunch of time spent on negotiation and following up on people you met at conferences, going to conferences, prepping for them. I mean, it's basically with the whole networking setup, and I can't afford not to go to conferences. They're crazy expensive, especially going from Europe to GDC. But paying attention to the networking at that point, it's so much worth it. But it does take a lot of time, a lot of focus, and going to all the parties, which is a drain as well. But fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess probably about 20 to 30% of my time is spent doing business development, like chasing up work and talking to clients and trying to win things and going for meetings on site, none of which is actually billable, which is a nightmare, which is probably why I will end up partnering with a biz dev person to offload all that onto them, because there's so much time spent doing that. But yeah, the rest of the time it's making coffee and coding. And networking, which means going to the pub.
Yeah, again, mine's kind of different. Working on site and preferring longer contracts. I think the shortest contract I've ever done was 6 months. Mine looks much more like a conventional day job. I probably spend maybe half a day added up a week doing things like replying to other emails or updating my website or whatever. The division of my time is much more like someone with a day job, I think. And accounting, I suppose. I do that as I go. I've got an amazing app where you just photograph receipts and it just magics all the numbers for you. So I spend 5 minutes a day doing accounting, I guess.
What's that app?
It's called Expensify.
Oh.
Really good.
Little plug there for Expensify. But obviously we've got some kind of very different ways of working on the panel. So we've got that kind of much more longer term contracts and a lot more kind of dynamic and flexible approach. When it comes to actually finding the work in the different markets that you go to, what have you found? Is there any places that you kind of think are perhaps a good place to go, or perhaps not a bad place to go in your experience? Where's good to find work?
The UK is awesome because there is a lot of game dev in the UK. I've only worked with British clients, even though I travel. I work for them, and a lot of my clients are as long as you get the work done, you can do it whenever and whatever hours. So, in the last couple of months, I've been working for a studio in London and on this collaboration indie game in Thailand, in Phuket for a month, and New Zealand for a couple of months, and it's completely wrong time zones, wrong whatever, but it doesn't matter. That said, traveling around, I've not found much games industry in those places, which I thought was interesting. So New Zealand, for example, beautiful place, but their games industry seems quite fledgling, it's quite small. It is building, So even though I actually had a year work visa for New Zealand, I didn't find any work there. But it doesn't matter because I have like contacts and people I know in the UK that I can work with.
Yeah, I've actually only had one client in the UK. Mostly it's been US, a bit of Asia, and then Sweden. Fair few in Denmark, but generally the games industry there is not that big and not super well funded. So there's not a lot of room and budgets for hiring freelancers. So it's usually the ones I've had in Denmark have been, a couple of days here, go in and review a project, give some feedback on specific design or whatever. Yeah.
I used to be in the games industry, but I personally think that the games industry is far too saturated with people that want to do everything. That drives rates down in general, and I focus instead outside of the games industry. I don't really do games at all anymore. I mainly do like more corporate 3D, whether that's like marketing, advertising, that kind of thing, whether it's like training, e-learning and so on. Those are the kind of markets that I'm most interested in. They also can kind of pivot quicker to newer technologies, and they want to show kind of like new tech to people to impress people. So I get to do kind of like new tech stuff, which is what really, really interests me. But yeah, I don't recommend doing that because I want to do all that work, so I shouldn't really have told you.
My work's mostly in games, has been recently, although I've also done a fair bit of e-learning. Where we're based in Brighton, it's got big games and big e-learning industries, and Unity's really popular in both of those industries at the moment, so there's plenty of work to go around. Especially Brighton and London as well, there's a lot of what I've ended up specialising in, which is sort of casual mobile 2D stuff. There's so much work in that area. It's a fantastic place to be, and like I said, I tend to work on site, so I don't really look any further afield than where I can travel in about an hour or so.
Awesome. So what does the next question really kind of what does your typical kind of gig look like, and what's your kind of favourite work to be doing? Like I guess we've got various specializations in the group as well, so maybe talk a little bit about that as well.
So my speciality is Unity gameplay stuff, I guess. I'm weird. I love like performance optimization, which is really dorky, but I do a lot of that. So I don't know. I'm torn. Part of me really loves the sort of stuff that Kerry's been talking about, where you go into an office and you work for your day and you pack up your stuff and you go home and you switch off. Like, there's a lot to be said for that because it's nice, you switch off. But then what I'm currently doing is a indie, smaller game where the pay is low but the hours are long. But I'm making a game and I'm the only coder on it, and it's brilliant because I can code all day and do fun gameplay stuff instead of just parachuting in and fixing other people's stuff, because that's quite a lot of what freelancing is. Well, for me anyway, my experience. So yeah, I don't have a typical gig per se. They vary quite a lot. But mainly I like ones where I like working from home, wherever home may be, whether it's a coffee shop, hotel, or actually at my parents' house somewhere for a week. Just anything where I can work on my own stuff, that's ideal, and that's what I pick.
Yeah, I specialize in AI, but also a lot of the stuff I do is, I know basically all of Unity with the exception of shaders, so lots of various Unity things. And I usually haven't done contracts more than 3 months stretches. A fair few for just like a week or maybe a couple of days to just go fix something or do a review of some parts or code review, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that my background being technical director for just over a decade means that people generally approach me asking for a solution, so I'm kind of involved throughout the entire project life cycle, right from like conception all the way through to delivery. And I'm usually the like lead programmer on the project as well. But yeah, my work is more along those lines, and I specialize over the last couple of years mainly doing VR and AR apps and experiences, I guess, and lots of shiny 3D things, which is what I really like.
Yeah, I've ended up specialising in 2D mobile stuff, which I really enjoy, sort of the opposite of what you do, really. And particularly data-driven things, I suppose UI as well. I kind of a generalist in that area. I'll have a go at anything. It's not like I'm sort of super into AI or shaders or whatever. I'll kind of, just be a spare pair of hands on the project as a rule. I've had some lead dev roles, but I'm quite happy not being in charge as well and just getting on with whatever needs doing, really.
Awesome. So say you were just starting out, what kind of hardware and software and all of that kind of stuff, what does your kind of bag of kit look like? And also, do any of your gigs provide kit for you? Because obviously, you'll be doing a lot of mobile work or different hardware. You're going to need access to that kit as well somehow. How does that work?
My usual kit, I do a lot of like desktop, some mobile stuff, but actually it's a lot of my stuff's desktop stuff these days. I just have my MacBook Pro. There's various plug adapters and stuff, and that's enough. That is all I need. Like, all I need to do my job is my laptop, power, internet. That's it. Which is why I travel, because I don't need an office or a desk or tons of gear, because I've purposefully chosen to take the contracts where I don't need that. That said, a contract I was doing in New Zealand was to optimize a mobile game for an iPhone 4S, and I'm like, hang on, I'm living out of a backpack, I don't have an iPhone 4S. And I had to source one in this rural, tiny town in the middle of nowhere. I found one, like from a dude, like a 10-minute walk away, who was just selling this iPhone 4S he didn't want. I was like, brilliant. That saves me a big trip to a city somewhere. But generally I travel super light, but that's through choice. I mean, if I could have a room somewhere full of tech and shiny things, I would. But for me, the flexibility in travel is more important.
Yeah, I mean, initially, like as I said, I jumped out without any prep or savings or anything, so I could afford a MacBook Air, which was nice. But once I got first client's payment, switched that out with a MacBook Pro top spec. And I mean, seeing as I'm working from home, got some external monitors, and but yeah, I mean, the choice of not sticking with the Air was basically I can't really show up at the client's office going like, yeah, it's a nice game, but I can't run it. So, can you like show me? I don't know. Yeah, that's basically it. I mean, with regards to clients having like on-site stuff. I've mostly just come across like available monitors and whatever I plug into. Sometimes like weird security systems, you gotta have, like dual boot into Windows and use their fancy security setup, but it's about the extent of it.
I wish that I could take a laptop and work from a coffee shop. I really can. I also do a lot of installation work as well, so I often have like the hardware that it will be running on set up in my office. Like right at the moment, I've got my two 27-inch monitors, and I've got a 46-inch touchscreen thing that just dominates the room. It's horrific. I mean, it's really cool, but it's horrible just having it towering over me. I've got so much tech. I've got like 3 desktops, at least 2 laptops about the place, like a NAS box, another server. I can't work anywhere other than at my desk. I really wish I could, but and there's also like DK2 and the Gear VR and various other things like Razer Hydra and Leap Motion and so on, and Mayo and all that. And I can't work anywhere other than at my desk, which is really, I don't know, it's all right. I like all the tech, but it's not very flexible at all.
The reason I'm laughing is that his office is also our living room, so just imagine that. God, again, totally different to everyone else. I have a decent spec laptop. I got like a gaming spec laptop, mostly for playing Sims 3 on, and also doing I do indie dev. My personal projects tend to be 3D, so I've got a decent enough laptop to do all-right-ish 3D projects in my own time, but again, the type of contracts I take on, equipment's provided, licenses are provided. I would say it's useful to invest in software. That's something that hasn't really come up, but I think it's actually super useful to make sure that you're experienced in using a bunch of the popular plugins, for example. Like if you're thinking of going into 2D work, make sure you're familiar with some of the bigger 2D plugins. When they're on sale for 30 quid or so, buy them, try them out, get an opinion on them. People are hiring you as much for your expertise as your experience. So if you've got an opinion on what's going to be a good choice for a project, that's super useful. So invest in software, try out the popular things on the asset store, be knowledgeable about the whole of the Unity ecosystem, not just vanilla Unity. If you're thinking of going into mobile, it's probably more sensible to buy a MacBook Pro than a Windows laptop, because, of course, if you're developing for iOS, which is still the major platform, I think, in this country, I'm in a different country. Where am I? Obviously, for Western releases, iOS is still really the dominant platform. So if you want to develop for iOS, you will need, at the very least, an older model of iPhone kicking around and a MacBook. But yeah, I think software's one to bear in mind as well.
Is there any other software that you guys use that you probably couldn't do without as a freelancer?
I think it's good to get the hang of the basics, the big ones, even if you're not using them much, like Photoshop. You can get super cheap subscriptions, like £6 a month or whatever. Even if you don't use it a lot, get familiar with it. You never know when you'll need to nip in and edit a file.
Yeah, also, again, with the defensive structure here, I live in my to-do tracking app, get everything out of my head into a system, put a date on it so it's out in the future somewhere, lots of calendar stuff. Yeah, it's an essential part of me surviving it, basically.
That's a really good point. I've used various to-do list apps, and it's always changing. I'm always like, oh, this one doesn't quite do what I want, this one does. I just switched to Wunderlist a month ago as a test, and it's actually really good, and it's really easy to use, and the mobile app is nice. Because some I've used, it's they work well on desktop or in your browser, but they're terrible on mobile or vice versa. So that kind of covers everything. Photoshop as well. That's always super handy.
Oh, and I really like Trello for task management. That's really super good for project management, task management stuff.
I use OmniFocus, which, I mean, it lives in the Apple ecosystem only, so that's a limitation there. But it's provided me a good balance between nice apps and the flexibility I need. I actually did a blog post a couple of months ago about the tools I use, because everyone's building their own toolkit, and so nice Sublime text, that sort of stuff. Get it all set up nicely. I could get Photoshop, but it would be horrible. So I should not get anywhere near it. Maybe I can do some lolcat pictures, but that's about it.
I think you're doing yourself a disservice, Emil. You did design your company logo, right?
Oh yeah, I did do this. 10, 12 years ago. Half an hour in Coral Draw.
Coral Draw, nice. Cool. So let's move on a bit more to kind of the kind of skills that you need as a freelancer, because obviously you have to have some kind of fundamental speciality in Unity to some degree. But what kind of ancillary skills do you think are kind of essential to live the life as a freelancer? There's got to be some important ones there, right?
Yeah, it's running a business, so there's the skills around that. So admin, being able to understand the basics of accounting legals, whether or not you have a lawyer, you still need to know a little bit, just if it's just you and your company at least. The networking and social skills are important. But mainly project management and time management, those two. If you're working, even if you're not working for yourself, but you're working for somebody, you've still got to manage your time very well, manage your tasks. So again, to-do lists and all that stuff, super useful.
Yeah, general management, it's not just for your own survivability, it's also part of the service you can provide to the client. You're kind of expected to show up as, know your shit, and be able to just go in and get everything sorted, right, magically. Lots of structure and organization skills, very useful.
I say one of the most important things is to be reliable. Make sure that your client knows you're reliable and you will deliver, and that you're always there to, well, almost always there to answer questions whenever they got anything. But yeah, being reliable means that they will come back to you and commission you to do more work. So I'd say that's one of the most important things. And I think being sociable and friendly is another really important one, because nobody wants to hire an arsehole, really. Yeah, I think that's very important.
Yeah, I agree. Time management and organisation, reliability, definitely social skills, especially if you're working on site, because otherwise you're going to have that awful feeling of being the new person and then it's time to leave. So yeah, get in there, be friendly. I think as well, having a really broad knowledge is a useful thing. Like, really do keep abreast of trends in what's going on, both in your specific area, like in my case, mobile, 2D, that sort of thing. But like, have a little go at everything, keep up with the news on game dev in general. Like Emil said, that they want somebody who's going to turn up and have ideas and solutions and a certain amount of expertise. So keep your finger on the pulse, like bring something else to the party other than just a competent pair of hands. Yeah,
I think one thing is always learn, like never stagnate, always learn new things. Really, really important. You can't just sit there and go, I mean, you know, if I had, I'd still be doing Flash. Yeah, you've got to, yeah, you've really got to keep, yeah, just keep learning everything you possibly can, I'd say.
I think that's also general for tech, or at least games industry in general. I mean, even if you're not freelancing, you've got to stay up to date, because otherwise, I mean, industry is waiting for no one. But yeah, I mean, especially when you're coming out and providing a service, you can't really, there's no one to hide behind.
Yeah, I think that staying ahead of the curve is really important. Like, if you're happy doing what you're doing now, then great, and you can keep doing that. But then keep an eye out for what tech is coming up and what software and what programming languages and all this stuff, because it always changes. There's always different stuff out there. And it's like Iestyn started doing the VR stuff, and I was like the VR guy, like, and that's because he jumped on that really early and became an expert at it. And then now people are using it more and more and more, and he's the go-to guy. So it's stay ahead of it and kind of find something you enjoy and make sure you know the latest tech and what's coming out in 6 months, a year, what the rumors are.
Awesome. So, yeah, we've got one last question before we can pass it over to you guys to ask some questions. This one's kind of the classic one, really. It's the kind of like if Doc from Back to the Future came running in right now and pulled you outside to a DeLorean and took you back in time to when you were just starting out as a freelancer, or maybe just considering it, what would you go back and tell your old, back in the future, back in the past version of yourself? Like, just do this, please do this, because that's going to be a nightmare for you.
For me, it covers like everything we've said, basically, but for me, the one vital thing is just stay on top of your finances. When you work a day job, you have a salary coming in every month, and you know what you're going to get paid and when. And as a freelancer, you get clients who might not pay, or they might take a couple of months to pay, and you're like, I've got to pay bills and stuff. So for me, my golden rule is make sure you've got X amount of cash. Like, you personally will know based on your expenses how much you need per month. So I make sure I've got a 6-month buffer at least. So if I don't get paid for a few months, it's annoying, but it's not the end of the world, and I can just chase it. So that for me is vital, like finances.
Yeah, I'm just going to continue my boring track here on defensive structure and like get organized quickly, get everything out of the way, out of your like internal desk, like push it into a calendar, push it into your to-do list, push that into the future, so it's dealt with now, and you don't have to look at it until it arrives on the horizon. So you can focus all your attention on the here and now and provide full value there without getting distracted or stressed by all the other stuff.
Yeah, I'd say don't set up an office in your living room.
Yeah.
You really the whole work-life balance thing. There needs to be some separation between the two. Try and figure that out as soon as you can, whether that's a different room or a separate office in another building. something along those lines, I'd say, is important. Yeah, that's probably the most important thing for me.
I think, I know I wasn't offered a choice, but I think I'd choose to go back a little further and tell the me that was kind of on the fence about doing this, thinking, oh, should I do it, shouldn't I, to just go for it and worry less. It's been so rewarding, and there have been times in my life when I've stuck it out in jobs thinking that the security was worth the trade-off of being a bit miserable there, and it wasn't. I'd have done so much better to just take the plunge, get out there, get into contracts, try working in a bunch of different studios, find out what really works for me. I wish I'd done it sooner.
Yeah, just got to have faith that it's going to work out, really. Just trust yourself that it's all going to be okay, and it generally is. Yeah.
Awesome. I feel like I want to be a freelancer now. Okay, so let's switch over to some questions from the audience. If you have a question, maybe put your hand up and stand up, and we'll bring a mic over to you. There's one over there. There's a mic right there.
It's not turned on.
What'd you say? Okay, now? All right. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the insights in your life. That's really interesting, I think. Yeah, I've been a freelancer also since 2008. And yeah, the thing I always come across is clients who want to drop your rate. You know, who just trying to get you as low as possible. Totally disregarding, yeah, that you have a life, you have bills to pay and all that. Yeah, my question would be, how do you do that? I mean, do you say them from straight from the beginning, like, I'm not going to work for this rate, or you know, I have this limit, or I mean, also you want to have profit, right? I mean, so you have to have some kind of, yeah, how do you go in the negotiation actually? I mean, that's. I mean, now I'm doing pretty okay, I think. But this always was a big, yeah.
I think.
Yeah, it's always a big thing, and it still is. I mean, yeah.
I think it's super important to, when you're negotiating about that stuff, have a floor, have a rate, like, do the maths. My accountant advised me to work out, assume you're going to work approximately 9 months a year and work out what you would want your salary to be based on that, and have a floor, and if it's below that, you don't do it, and just be firm. I was initially terrified of turning down, in my mind, you know, turning down perfectly good work because the rate was too low. It wasn't good work. If it was good work, they'd have paid me my rate for it. So yeah, just have a floor in your head. Don't go any lower than that. If they can't pay at least that, then look for different work.
Yeah, on that note, I had some advice given to me a few years ago, which is every new client, put your rate up a tiny bit, whether that's £20 extra. And then when you put it up, and then when you hit a ceiling or you stop winning work, then you know that you've kind of hit the limit. But when people are trying to talk you down, maybe do a discount if it's, you know, a long job.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
One thing,
yeah.
You know, if they're like, here's 6 months of work, will you consider a bit less? Yeah, if it's interesting. But otherwise, just no, don't do it. There'll be people out there that will pay.
Yeah, I mean, working with a, you know, theoretical ceiling and a floor, of course. That's the base, but also within that, there is not really you don't have a set rate. Like Google will pay way more than the interesting indie thing around the corner, but you will still want to do the interesting indie thing because they're doing something really cool. So I mean, it's all the the game of building that buffer, maintaining that, making sure you can invest a bit of it into doing something really interesting that you'll learn from, and just be part of something cool. Also, like if you have that buffer, and some planned out contracts, don't be afraid to say no, straight up no. I've had clients come back a couple of times and finally agreeing on the rate, like where I just go, yeah, that's fine, but no, I'm not gonna go into this. So I think it was like a year and a half later. They were getting close to shipping, so started needing it. But yeah, it's a dance. But yeah, I mean, keep that buffer going.
Yeah, it's all about that buffer, so you can go back and forth between the fun projects and then the really, really hard work but very well paid ones. If you don't know what your day rate should be, and I get that a lot, people go to me, I want to go freelance, but I don't know how much I should get paid. What do I ask for? And then people go, I want to ask this much, but that sounds really cheeky. And I'm like, well, try it. If that's how much you want, ask. And if they won't pay it, they'll haggle you. They will haggle you down. And you will find your price point of where you can find work. But different clients offer different amounts of money. Some larger studios or different industries have more money available. Also ask friends, because there will be people probably you know who work in your area with about your level of experience that you can ask. So I remember when I first went freelance, I actually asked Iestyn. Because I was like, dude, we both know Unity really well, similar industries. Give us a heads up, roughly whereabouts should I be pitching at? And that's kind of where I started off. I was like, at least I've got a basic idea of roughly where I'm at. But yeah, if you can work for some clients that you can charge more to, it does give you that buffer. So I'm doing indie collaboration work now, and the money is low because it's an indie collaboration project. But it doesn't matter because I saved up in the year before to have that buffer. So now I can do fun game dev stuff, and it's fun.
Okay, but do you expect to get paid more if the indie game really hits, or?
Yeah, if you take a low-paid job, the other thing is it's not all about day rate. Sometimes you can ask for equity. Ooh. So equity is a good one, and I have equity in my games, so that's yeah.
I honestly, I run for the hills when
really?
that's suggested. I don't want to. It's a variable. Again with the safety. It's a variable I don't want in there. I just want to, I show up for this amount of time, do the work, get paid, out, done, have fun. But yeah, I mean, maybe I should try it out at some point.
It depends on the project. If you find, sometimes you'll get pitched a really, really, really good idea, and the only way it will ever come to fruition is if you just go, fuck it, why not? When I left uni, I didn't work in games, and I took a big risk, went and worked at a startup studio where the money was terrible, I lost all the benefits, I worked crazy hours, but it got me in the industry. So it's sometimes you have to take that leap of faith, and sometimes it will work out, but you've got to pick it wisely and make sure it's a good team and that it will pay off in the end.
Yeah. So we've probably got time for about one more question, actually. We're depending on how long the question is.
Couple, there's one there.
One from over here.
Yeah. And
so I worked as a freelance artist, and wherever I worked, we only hired artists as a freelance. Do you think there is a major difference between hiring a freelance artist or programmer? And yeah.
So I'm not sure from an art point of view, but the project I'm on is a collaboration, and we have quite a few artists actually on ours, and some are full-time, some are part-time, and from what I can understand from what they say, it works very similar to how I work. They have a day rate, their day rate varies depending on the client or the project, and yeah, I don't know any difference between what I do and how they work. It seems like it's a very similar setup, although a lot of them are self-employed as opposed to running a company. But I'd always go down the running a company route. It's a bit safer. But.
I'd say the only thing about being a freelance artist, I often either end up hiring freelance artists or recommending freelance artists to clients to work with. And that is when I'm recommending somebody or hiring somebody, they have to be up to date with the latest techniques, which at the moment is mainly like PBS, so whether that's using Substance Designer and Substance Painter, or whether it's using Quixel, being able to make Unity look awesome. But that's my kind of niche anyways, so I look for people that have those skills. But I think, again, that's kind of like learning new things, which we mentioned earlier. But yeah, keep on top of it, and also make sure you've got a great portfolio. I know some amazing artists that don't really have a portfolio. It's just why? Stop what you're doing and make an awesome portfolio to show off your awesome work. I'm sure it wouldn't take long, right? I don't know, I'm not an artist.
I think we've actually still got room for just one more. Go on over here.
Hi there. Firstly, just a comment. It's great to see a gender-balanced panel at a tech conference, so thank you very much for that. In terms of being geographically diverse, though, I think a lot of the things about being a freelancer are some of the comments Kat mentioned about being able to work anywhere. Although 3 of you are based in Brighton, is that correct? You're not?
Us two are.
You're 2 based in Brighton.
I'm in Copenhagen.
And obviously I'm kind of in deepest, darkest Norfolk, which is not known for its game scene. And that initial contacting clients, I just wondered if you still felt that being geographically close to studios, to clients, is important now, just to make that initial contact.
Ooh, I think it helps. I think it definitely helps, but I mean, most of my work is remote, and I work for companies in London and like Bristol and America. So, yeah, I don't think it matters a huge amount. I think it's definitely handy to have those local contacts, but I don't think it's essential.
I think lots of studios are diversifying a bit these days, so you can work from various places. For me, I was based in London. I'm officially now based out of my parents' house in the middle of the countryside in Lincolnshire, in the UK, and there's nobody around there that does games. There's all farmland. But it doesn't matter. I can work from there as long as you've got that good client base and network. And everybody uses like Slack or Skype or Google Chat or whatever to do their communication anyway. So most companies, especially in games or tech, they're quite forward-thinking. So you don't need to physically be in the same room. That said, it does help. So I travel to London occasionally to work with my team just to make sure we are all on the same page, and then I'll go off again for a few months.
Yeah, I mean, I think the local industry, it helps in the way that it draws in interest, both not just like locally universities and such, but also external people, external companies get interested, show up. It kind of builds this ecosystem around it. You can do events, all this stuff. It starts, it starts the networking opportunities. But yeah, I mean, in terms of like remote work and such, I even had I had a client at one point where the entire team was distributed. So I was getting ready to talk about when I was going on site. But they went, no, we'll send you a dev kit, and you can just start working on it, right? Okay. It's really very different. Yeah.
Start Norfolk Indies, even if it's just you in the pub on your own. Like, foster a game scene. Excellent, good work.
Awesome. Well, I'd suggest that we give the panel a round of applause.